Marcus Chen had always been fascinated by medieval armor, spending countless hours at the Metropolitan Museum's Arms and Armor collection during his lunch breaks from his mundane accounting job. At 28, he lived alone in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, his only companions being his collection of historical warfare books and an unhealthy obsession with documentaries about ancient civilizations. His coworkers found him odd, always carrying around thick volumes about Crusader knights or Roman legionnaires, but Marcus didn't care. History was his escape from the monotony of spreadsheets and quarterly reports. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday in October. Marcus was walking through Central Park, taking his usual shortcut to the subway after another mind-numbing day at Patterson and Associates accounting firm, when he noticed something glinting in the fading sunlight near the reservoir. At first, he thought it might be a discarded piece of jewelry or maybe some kind of art installation, but as he approached, his breath caught in his throat. There, sitting on a bench with her back to him, was a woman wearing what appeared to be the most intricate suit of armor he had ever seen. It wasn't medieval European style, nor was it Roman or Greek. The design was unlike anything in his extensive knowledge of historical warfare. The metal seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly quality, almost as if it were alive, and the craftsmanship was so detailed that every joint, every plate, every decorative element appeared to serve both aesthetic and functional purposes. Marcus found himself frozen in place, his mind racing as he tried to categorize what he was seeing. The armor had flowing lines that seemed to suggest both protection and grace, with panels that curved in ways that defied traditional metallurgy. There were symbols etched into the surface that looked almost like writing, but in no language he had ever encountered in his years of studying ancient cultures. The woman wearing the armor sat perfectly still, her helmet covering her face completely. From behind, Marcus could see that she was tall and statuesque, and something about her posture suggested she was lost in deep thought. He wanted to approach her, to ask about the incredible piece of craftsmanship she was wearing, but something held him back. There was an aura about her that seemed to warn against casual interruption. For nearly 20 minutes, Marcus stood there, studying every detail he could see from his position about 15 feet away. He noticed how the armor seemed to respond to the changing light, how certain sections appeared to pulse with a subtle inner glow, and how the whole ensemble seemed to fit the woman's form as if it had been grown rather than forged. Just as Marcus was beginning to convince himself that this might be some kind of elaborate costume, or perhaps a street performer preparing for a show, the woman stood up. She moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible given the apparent weight and complexity of what she was wearing. As she turned, Marcus caught a glimpse of her helmet's visor, which reflected the dying sunlight like a mirror. She began walking toward the park's exit, her movements so smooth and controlled that she seemed to glide rather than walk. Marcus found himself following at a distance, unable to resist the pull of curiosity. He told himself he was just heading to the subway anyway, but deep down he knew he was being drawn by something he couldn't explain. The woman walked through the park with purpose, never hesitating at intersections or seeming to check her surroundings. She moved like someone who knew exactly where she was going, despite the fact that her helmet presumably limited her vision. Marcus struggled to keep up, his ordinary business shoes clicking on the pavement while her armored feet made no sound at all. As they reached the edge of the park, the woman suddenly stopped and turned around. Even with her face completely hidden behind the ornate helmet, Marcus felt as though she was looking directly at him. He froze, feeling like a child caught spying on adults, his face burning with embarrassment. For a long moment, they stood there in a silent standoff, the strange armored woman and the awkward accountant who had been following her. Then, to Marcus's complete surprise, she raised one gauntleted hand and gestured for him to approach. His heart hammered in his chest as he walked toward her, every instinct telling him to run while his curiosity demanded he move closer. When he was close enough to see his own reflection in her visor, she spoke. Her voice was unlike anything he had ever heard, melodious and clear, but with subtle harmonics that seemed to resonate in his chest. "You have been observing my protective shell with great interest," she said, her words carrying an accent he couldn't place. "Your fascination suggests knowledge of warrior crafts." Marcus stammered, trying to find his voice. I'm sorry for starring. It's just that your armor is incredible. I've never seen anything like it. The craftsmanship, the design. It's unlike any historical piece I've studied." The woman tilted her helmeted head slightly, as if considering his words. "Historical," she repeated, and Marcus thought he detected something like amusement in her tone. "You study the warrior traditions of your people." "Yes," Marcus managed, his nervousness beginning to fade as they moved into familiar territory. "I'm fascinated by armor throughout history. European, Asian, Middle Eastern. I've studied them all. But yours, it's something entirely new." The woman was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus began to worry he had said something wrong. Then she spoke again, her voice softer now. "Would you like to understand what you have been observing?" Marcus nodded eagerly, his excitement overriding his caution. "More than anything." The woman looked around the park, noting the few remaining joggers and dog walkers in the distance. "Not here," she said. "Too many eyes. There is a place nearby where we can speak without observation. Will you accompany me?" Every rational part of Marcus's mind screamed warnings about following strangers to secondary locations, especially strangers wearing mysterious armor who spoke in riddles. But his curiosity was stronger than his caution, and something about the woman's manner suggested honor rather than threat. "Lead the way," he said, and immediately wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. The woman led Marcus through several blocks of Manhattan's Upper East Side, moving through areas he had never explored despite living in the city for 6 years. She seemed to know the streets intimately, taking shortcuts through alleys and side streets that Marcus hadn't even known existed. Throughout their walk, she maintained her silence, moving with that same fluid grace that defied the apparent weight of her armor. They eventually arrived at what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse in a section of the city that Marcus couldn't immediately identify. The woman produced what looked like a standard key from somewhere within her armor and unlocked a heavy steel door that showed no signs from the outside of being anything other than secured storage. Inside, Marcus was stunned to find a space that had been converted into something resembling a combination workshop, laboratory, and living quarters. The walls were lined with what appeared to be more pieces of armor, weapons, and devices that he couldn't begin to identify. The lighting came from panels that seemed to generate their own soft, warm glow without any visible power source. "Please sit," the woman said, gesturing to a chair that, like everything else in the space, appeared to be made from the same unknown material as her armor. "I believe explanations are required." Marcus lowered himself into the chair, which was surprisingly comfortable despite its alien appearance. "I have to ask," he said, "what is this place, and who are you?" The woman remained standing for a moment, then reached up and began to work at the fastenings of her helmet. "My name is Lyrale," she said, her voice now slightly muffled by whatever mechanism she was manipulating. "And I am not from your world." Before Marcus could fully process what she had said, she lifted the helmet from her head, and he found himself staring at the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her features were definitely humanoid, but with subtle differences that marked her as something other than human. Her skin had a slight luminescent quality. Her eyes were larger and more almond-shaped than any human's, colored a deep violet that seemed to shift and swirl with inner light. Her hair, which had been completely hidden by the helmet, cascaded down her shoulders in waves of silver white that seemed to move with a life of its own. Marcus sat in stunned silence, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Lyrale set her helmet carefully on a nearby surface and began working at the fastenings of her armor's chest piece. "You spend much time studying the protective gear of warriors," she said, her voice now clear and even more melodious without the helmet's interference. "But you have never seen armor that lives, have you?" "Lives," Marcus managed to croak out. Lyrale smiled, and Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. "My people do not forge metal into shape as yours do. We grow our protection, nurture it, form partnerships with it. This," she gestured to her armor, "is not merely worn, It is shared." As she spoke, she continued working at the armor's fastenings, and Marcus began to see that what he had taken for mechanical joints and clasps were actually something far more organic. The armor seemed to be responding to her touch, plates shifting and realigning themselves as she worked. "I shouldn't be showing you this," Lyrale continued, her expression growing serious. "My people have strict protocols about contact with developing civilizations, but you watched me today with such genuine appreciation, such understanding of what it means to carry the tools of a warrior, that I found myself curious about your perspective." The chest piece of her armor came free, revealing that underneath she wore what appeared to be a form-fitting garment that looked almost like a second skin. The armor piece itself continued to move slightly in her hands, and Marcus realized he was looking at something that was as much creature as equipment. "Your world has legends of visitors from the stars, does it not?" Lyrale asked, setting the chest piece carefully on a stand that seemed designed specifically for it. "Most are dismissed as imagination, but some carry truth. My people have been observing your civilization for many of your generations." Marcus found his voice at last. "You're saying you're an alien from another planet?" "That is your term, yes, though I prefer to think of myself as a traveler between worlds." She began working on the arm pieces of her armor, and Marcus watched in fascination as each piece revealed itself to be a living entity of some kind, moving and adjusting even after being removed. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Why are you showing me this?" Lyrale paused in her disarmament and looked directly at him. "Because I am alone," she said simply. "I have been on your world for 3 of your years, studying your people, your customs, your history. I have walked among you, but always hidden, always watching from behind the protection of my armor. Today, when I saw you watching me with such genuine interest and respect, I realized how much I longed for someone to see me as I truly am." She continued removing pieces of her armor, each revelation showing Marcus more of both the incredible technology and the vulnerability of the woman beneath it. Without the bulk of the armor, Lyrale appeared more delicate, though her movements still carried that same fluid grace. "Your studies of warrior traditions," she said, "they show respect for those who bear arms in service of others. My people are guardians, protectors of worlds that cannot yet protect themselves. I came to your world because it is approaching a crucial point in its development, a time when it will either learn to live in harmony with the greater universe or destroy itself through ignorance and fear." Marcus watched as she carefully placed each piece of armor on specially designed stands, noting how each piece seemed to settle into position with what almost looked like contentment. "And you're here to help us choose the right path." "I am here to observe and, if necessary, to intervene. But intervention is a last resort. Your people must choose their own destiny." She turned to face him fully, now wearing only the form-fitting undergarment that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Which is why what I am showing you is both a gift and a burden. What do you mean? Lyrale moved closer, and Marcus caught a scent like ozone and flowers. I mean that you now know the truth about my presence here. You have seen what I truly am, and you understand that your world is not alone in the universe. That knowledge will change you, Marcus Chen, whether you wish it or not. Marcus realized she knew his name, though he had never told her. How do you? I have been observing your world for 3 years, she reminded him gently. I know much about many of your people, but I have never revealed myself to any of them before now. The weight of what she was telling him began to settle on Marcus's shoulders. Why me? Lyrale smiled again, and this time Marcus saw something almost vulnerable in her expression. Because when you looked at my armor, you saw not a weapon or a tool of war, but a work of art. You saw beauty in the craftsmanship, respect for the tradition it represented. In a world where so many see only the function of violence, you saw the artistry of protection. She reached out and gently touched his hand, and Marcus felt a subtle electric sensation at the contact. And because I have been alone for so long, carrying the weight of my mission and my secrets, and today I realized that I trusted you enough to set that burden down, at least for a little while. Over the following weeks, Marcus found his entire world transformed. Lyrale had given him a communication device that looked like nothing more than a simple wristwatch, but allowed him to contact her whenever he needed to speak with someone who understood the magnitude of what he now knew. Their meetings became a regular occurrence, usually in the warehouse space she had converted into her base of operations. During these visits, Lyrale shared more about her people, the Valorians, and their role as cosmic guardians. She explained that her armor was not just protective gear, but a living symbiotic organism that had been paired with her since childhood. Each piece had its own consciousness and personality, working in harmony with both her and each other to provide not just physical protection, but enhanced abilities that allowed her to carry out her mission. Marcus learned that the Valorians had been watching Earth for centuries, documenting humanity's progress and occasionally intervening in subtle ways to prevent catastrophic events. Lyrale herself had prevented 3 separate attempts by hostile alien species to establish footholds on Earth, battles that had been fought in the shadows, with no human ever knowing how close they had come to invasion. Your people are remarkable, she told him during one of their evening conversations. Most species that reach your level of technological development either destroy themselves within a few generations or become so focused on expansion that they lose their connection to beauty, art, and individual expression. Humans have managed to advance while maintaining your creativity and passion. Marcus had been sketching her armor pieces, trying to understand their organic nature through his familiar lens of historical analysis. But you said we're at a crucial point. What makes this time different? Lyralay's expression grew serious. Your people are on the verge of developing technologies that will make you visible to the greater galactic community. Some species will see you as potential allies, others as threats to be eliminated before you can become competitors. The choices your leaders make in the next few years will determine whether humanity joins the community of civilized worlds or becomes a target for conquest. And if we make the wrong choices, then I and others like me will be forced to intervene more directly. But such intervention often requires actions that can be difficult to reconcile with our role as protectors. Marcus understood she was telling him that sometimes protecting a world meant making decisions that individual members of that world might not survive. The weight of this knowledge sat heavily on him, but it also deepened his appreciation for the burden Lyralay carried. As their friendship deepened, Marcus began to notice changes in himself. His mundane job at the accounting firm felt increasingly surreal, sitting in meetings about quarterly projections, while knowing that the fate of human civilization hung in the balance. His coworkers' complaints about traffic and coffee quality seemed trivial when measured against the cosmic scale of what Lyralay faced every day. But he also found himself seeing beauty in places he had never noticed before. Lyralay's perspective on humanity's unique combination of advancement and artistry made him look at his own species with new eyes. He began taking photographs of street art, spending time in galleries, engaging with the creative expressions of his fellow humans in ways that his previous focus on historical warfare had never encouraged. You see it now, Lyralay observed during one of their meetings, as Marcus showed her photographs he had taken around the city. The same impulse that drives your people to create beautiful armor also drives them to create beauty for its own sake. This is what makes humanity special, and why so many of us believe your species deserves protection. Their relationship was becoming something neither of them had anticipated. Marcus found himself falling in love with this strange, beautiful guardian from another world, while Lyralay seemed to be discovering what it meant to have someone who accepted her true nature without fear or judgment. The turning point came when Lyralay invited Marcus to witness her in action. A scanning station she had set up on the warehouse roof had detected an unauthorized probe entering Earth's atmosphere, likely sent by one of the hostile species she had mentioned. "Will you help me?" she asked as she began the process of bonding with her armor. Marcus watched in fascination as each piece seemed to come alive at her touch, flowing into position and sealing seamlessly with the others. "What can I do? I'm just an accountant." "You can watch," she said, her voice now filtered through the helmet's systems. You can witness what it means to stand guard over a world, and you can help me remember why it matters." Marcus followed her to the roof, where a platform had been prepared with equipment he couldn't begin to understand. Lyreley moved to the center of the platform, and suddenly, the entire setup began to glow with the same soft light as her armor. "The probe will be attempting to establish a relay beacon," she explained, her voice now carrying harmonics that suggested her armor was enhancing her natural abilities. "If it succeeds, a larger force will know that Earth has no adequate defenses." Marcus watched as Lyreley seemed to merge with the platform's systems, her armor interfacing with the technology in ways that made both seem more alive. Displays around the platform showed what appeared to be tactical information, tracking systems, and communication arrays. "There," she said, pointing to a section of sky that looked empty to Marcus's eyes. "Do you see it?" Through the platform's enhanced viewing systems, Marcus could make out a small, metallic object moving through the upper atmosphere. It was clearly artificial and definitely not human in origin. Lyreley raised her arms, and Marcus saw energy begin to build around her armored form. The symbiotic organisms that made up her protection were working in perfect harmony, channeling and focusing power in ways that seemed to defy physics. A beam of coherent energy lanced out from Lyreley's position, striking the probe with precision that boggled Marcus's mind. The alien device simply vanished, leaving no trace of its existence. "It is done," Lyreley said, the energy around her fading as she stepped back from the platform's center. "Earth remains hidden for another day." As Marcus watched her power down the systems and begin the process of separating from her armor, he realized that he was witnessing something that perhaps no other human had ever seen. He was watching a guardian at work, someone who stood between his world and forces that would destroy it. "How often do you have to do this?" he asked. "More frequently than I would like," she replied, her voice tired now that the immediate crisis had passed. "And I fear the frequency is increasing." The increase in hostile activity that Lyreley had mentioned became dramatically apparent over the next month. Marcus found himself called to the warehouse at all hours as various threats materialized in Earth's vicinity. Sometimes they were probes like the first one he had witnessed being destroyed, but other times they were more serious incursions that required Lyreley to leave Earth's atmosphere entirely. During one such incident, Marcus waited in the warehouse for 18 hours, watching displays that showed Lyreley's armor signature moving through space at speeds that his mind struggled to comprehend. When she finally returned, her armor showed signs of damage that made his heart race with concern. "There were 3 of them this time," she explained as she carefully removed pieces of her armor, checking each symbiotic organism for injuries. A reconnaissance force testing our response capabilities. Marcus helped her place the armor pieces on their stands, noting that several seemed to be moving more slowly than usual. Are they hurt? Exhausted, Lyreley corrected. The battle was longer than expected. They will recover, but it will take time. She looked tired in a way that Marcus had never seen before, her luminescent skin seeming dimmer than usual. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said. "Is there no one who can help you?" Lyreley shook her head. "My people work alone. It is part of our code. Each guardian is responsible for their assigned world or sector." "But what if something happens to you? What if you're injured or—" Marcus couldn't bring himself to finish the sentence. "Then another guardian will be sent to replace me. But that could take years, and by then it might be too late for your people." The weight of her words settled over them both. Marcus realized that not only was Lyreley carrying the burden of protecting an entire world, she was doing so without backup or support, isolated from her own people by duty and distance. "There has to be another way," he said. "Some way to give you support, or at least to reduce the burden." Lyreley looked at him with an expression that seemed to mix hope with resignation. "There is a way," she said slowly, "but it would require changes that would affect both of us permanently." "What kind of changes?" She gestured to her armor, still resting on its stands. "My people's technology is not just tools and weapons. It is a living partnership. The armor you have seen me wear is not just protective gear. It is a part of me as much as my heart or my mind." Marcus nodded, understanding that much from his observations. "But armor is not the only symbiotic partnership my people can form. There are others, designed for different purposes. Communication symbiotes that allow instant contact across galactic distances. Enhancement symbiotes that improve physical and mental capabilities. Support symbiotes that can extend one person's abilities through partnership with another." The implications of what she was suggesting began to dawn on Marcus. "You're talking about me sharing one of these symbiotic relationships." "I am talking about us sharing a partnership that would allow you to assist me more directly, to help carry the burden of protecting your world." Marcus felt his heart racing. Would that even be possible? "I'm human, not Valorian. My people have formed partnerships with other species before, when circumstances required it. The symbiotes are adaptable. But Marcus, you must understand what this would mean. Such a partnership cannot be undone. You would be changed permanently in ways that would separate you from your own people as surely as my mission separates me from mine." Marcus looked at the armor stands, watching the subtle movements of the organisms that had bonded with Lyreley and served as her protection and support. The idea of forming such a partnership was both terrifying and exciting. What would happen to me? How would I change? You would gain abilities that no human has ever possessed. Enhanced strength, speed, resilience. The ability to survive in environments that would kill an unprotected human. But you would also lose some of your humanity. The symbiote would become part of your biology, changing you on a fundamental level. Lyrale moved closer to him, her violet eyes reflecting a depth of emotion that made Marcus's breath catch. And you would be bound to me in ways that go beyond simple partnership. The support symbiotes create a connection between minds, sharing thoughts and emotions. You would know me as I truly am, just as I would know you. A permanent connection. She nodded. As permanent as life itself. We would be partners in the truest sense, sharing not just the mission but our very existence. Marcus felt as though he were standing at the edge of a precipice, looking down into an abyss that might contain either destruction or transformation beyond anything he could imagine. Everything he had known about his life, his future, his place in the world, hung in the balance of this decision. How much time do I have to decide? Lyrale's expression grew grave. Not much. The attacks are escalating. Within days, possibly hours, I will face a threat that I cannot handle alone. If you are going to join me in this mission, it must be soon. She reached out and took his hand, and Marcus felt that same electric sensation he had experienced during their first meeting. I would not ask this of you if there were any other option, but I have come to care for you, Marcus, in ways that go beyond gratitude or companionship. The thought of facing what is coming alone, knowing that failure means the destruction of your world and the loss of any chance for us to explore what we might become together. She left the sentence unfinished, but Marcus understood. They were both facing a choice that would determine not just their individual futures, but the fate of everyone and everything he had ever known. If I agree to this, he said, if I accept this partnership, what exactly would I become? Lyrale smiled, and for the first time since he had known her, it was a smile without shadows. You would become something new, Marcus, something that has never existed before, a bridge between two worlds, a guardian who understands both the species he protects and the forces that threaten them. She paused, studying his face. And you would become my partner in every sense of the word, not just in battle, but in life. The bond we would share would make us stronger together than either of us could ever be alone. Marcus looked around the warehouse, at the evidence of Lyrale's long solitary mission, at the armor that had protected her through countless battles, at the woman who had trusted him with the greatest secret in human history. He thought about his mundane life, his lonely apartment, his meaningless job pushing numbers around spreadsheets while the fate of civilization hung in the balance. When do we start? He asked. The transformation process began at dawn. with Lyrale preparing what she called a communion chamber in the center of the warehouse. The setup involved equipment that Marcus couldn't begin to understand, along with a crystalline pod that seemed to pulse with its own internal light. The support symbiote has been growing in stasis for the past week, Lyrale explained as she made final adjustments to the chamber's systems. I began the cultivation process after our first meeting, hoping that circumstances might allow for this partnership, but not certain it would be necessary. Marcus realized she had been planning for this possibility much longer than she had let on. You knew this might happen. I hoped it might happen, she corrected. The alternative was facing the coming crisis alone, with all the risks that entailed. The symbiote itself was beautiful in an alien way, resembling a cross between a sea anemone and a flowering plant, with tendrils that moved in patterns that seemed almost like breathing. It was about the size of Marcus's fist and glowed with a soft blue-green light. It will interface with your nervous system first, Lyrale explained, establishing the basic connection that will allow us to share thoughts and sensations. Then it will begin the process of enhancing your physical capabilities, strengthening your bones, improving your reflexes, increasing your resilience. How long will it take? The initial bonding will happen within hours. The full transformation will take several days. During that time, you will need to remain in the chamber while your body adapts to the changes. Marcus looked at the chamber, which resembled a high-tech cocoon. And you'll be here. Lyrale nodded. I will monitor every step of the process. The symbiote will be drawing energy from both of us during the bonding, creating the connection that will make us true partners. As the sun rose higher, the equipment around the chamber began to activate. Marcus could feel a subtle vibration in the air, and the symbiote's glow intensified. It's time, Lyrale said, and Marcus could hear both excitement and concern in her voice. Marcus entered the chamber, which immediately began to adjust to his body temperature and size. The interior was surprisingly comfortable, more like a very advanced medical scanner than the alien cocoon it appeared to be from outside. Lyrale placed the symbiote on his chest, and Marcus felt an immediate tingling sensation as it made contact with his skin. The organism seemed to respond to his presence, its tendrils extending and beginning to interface with his nervous system. I can feel it, Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. It's like it's introducing itself. That's exactly what's happening, Lyrale said, her voice coming through speakers built into the chamber. The symbiote is learning your biology, understanding how to work with your human systems. The sensation intensified, and Marcus began to feel changes in his perception. Colors seemed more vivid, sounds more distinct. He could sense Lyrale's presence in a way that went beyond simple proximity. He could actually feel her emotions, her concern for his safety, her excitement at the possibility of true partnership. "Lyrale," he said, "I can feel what you're feeling." "And I can feel you," she replied, her voice filled with wonder. "The connection is stronger than I expected. Your human mind is more compatible with Valorian biotechnology than our scientists predicted." Over the next several hours, Marcus experienced the most profound transformation of his life. He could feel his bones strengthening, his muscles becoming more efficient, his reflexes quickening. But more than the physical changes, he was aware of a growing connection to Lyrale that allowed him to understand her in ways that no purely human relationship could match. Through their bond, he experienced her memories of other worlds, other species she had encountered in her role as a guardian. He felt her loneliness during her years of solitary service, her dedication to protecting species that would never know she existed, her growing love for humanity and specifically for him. In return, she experienced his memories of growing up human, his fascination with history and warfare, his loneliness in his mundane life, and his complete commitment to helping her protect the world he loved. By the third day, the transformation was complete. When Marcus emerged from the chamber, he felt like himself but also like something entirely new. His vision was clearer, his hearing more acute, his physical strength significantly enhanced. But most importantly, he was never alone. Lyrale's presence was a constant warm glow in his mind, providing comfort and support in ways he had never imagined possible. "How do you feel?" she asked, though through their bond she already knew the answer. "Complete," Marcus said, and realized it was true. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged, doing exactly what he was meant to do. Their timing proved to be perfect. Within hours of Marcus's transformation, Lyrale's sensors detected the largest incursion attempt yet, a full invasion fleet moving toward Earth, confident that the planet had no adequate defenses. "Are you ready?" Lyrale asked as they prepared for battle, both of them now wearing armor that had adapted to accommodate Marcus's human physiology, while providing him with the protection and capabilities he would need. Marcus looked at his partner, this incredible woman who had changed his life in every possible way, and felt the strength of their bond flowing between them. "We're ready," he corrected, and knew that together they could face whatever was coming. As they prepared to defend Earth against its greatest threat, Marcus realized that his life as a lonely accountant studying ancient armor was over. In its place was something he had never dared to dream of: a true partnership with someone who understood him completely, a purpose that gave meaning to every moment, and the power to protect everything he had ever cared about. The invasion fleet would find Earth better defended than they had anticipated, protected by a partnership that combined the best of two worlds and the strength that came from true love and shared purpose.